One of the concepts that nurses learn in nursing school is immunity, and I wanted to do just a very brief, very non-specific overview of that topic. There are two types of immunity, active and passive. In active and passive immunity, you have both natural and artificial. So active immunity means that your body actively produces the antibodies. So this can happen naturally through exposure to a pathogen. So you're exposed to an illness, your body produces antibodies to fight that illness. Or artificially, where you receive a vaccination so that your body produces antibodies for a particular pathogen. In passive immunity, there's also natural and artificial methods. In passive immunity, your body does not produce the antibodies itself, so you acquire them from an outside source. So natural passive immunity would be through breast milk during breastfeeding, or antibodies are transferred from mom to baby through the placenta during pregnancy. Those are examples of natural passive immunity. And then artificial passive immunity include antibody injections or infusions. So there are some illnesses that you receive an antibody injection or an infusion if you are exposed, such as rabies and hepatitis. And these are artificial passive. For this video, I do want to focus on active immunity and specifically vaccines, but not a specific vaccine, just to kind of give you an idea of how those work, how they come about, and then how they work in your body. There are vaccinations for some illnesses and not for others. So how is that decided? When vaccines are being developed, the risk associated with exposure or the actual illness is weighed against the risk associated with vaccination. So, of course, there are risks to vaccines, just like there are risks to anything that you put in your body, any medication, any food, even water. So these are weighed against the risk associated with exposure to the illness. Things that are also taken into consideration in the development of vaccines and which illnesses need a vaccine and which ones do not are how they're spread, and are there preventative measures that can be put in place that can curb the spread, and how contagious the illness is in general. So for example, the vaccine for chickenpox, when I was a kid, we did not get vaccinated for chickenpox. We all just caught it. And I wasn't aware, because I just kind of thought once, people were being vaccinated for chickenpox, I'm like, that's really weird because we all had it when we were kids. Like, what's the point of this? But there were actually 100 deaths per year from chickenpox in the United States, which seems like a really low number, but that's 100 children that were dying from chickenpox every single year. So once the vaccine was developed and widespread use of the vaccine has been happening in our country, that rate has decreased by 97% with vaccination. So the risk of that vaccine do outweigh the risk of exposure to chickenpox for those 100 children. As any of my students can tell you, I am not an artist at all, but I do like to draw diagrams and pictures because I feel like it helps a little bit. So this just kind of shows you the premise of natural versus artificial active immunity. So with natural immunity, you can see the pathogen is introduced to the body. That's the pathogen, those little circles there. And then they start multiplying within your body. So your immune system recognizes that there's something in here that doesn't belong and starts producing all of these antibodies, while in the meantime, your pathogen is replicating inside of your body. So the premise behind vaccines is that you receive the vaccination, your body produces the antibodies from that vaccine. Then when you're introduced to the pathogen, you don't have to go through these steps. Your body already has those antibodies ready to roll. So that pathogen doesn't have as much opportunity to multiply inside your body, causing symptomatic illness or creating that higher viral load. Both natural active immunity and artificial active immunity should leave your body with antibodies to fight future infection. So which is better? This is really an individual question. So you want to weigh the risk versus the benefit, and then individual factors. So things you want to consider when you're weighing the risk versus the benefit and your own individual factors. What are the complications of the illness? And what are the complications of the vaccine? What is the rate at which each of these things happen? Is one higher than the other? You want to consider your specific health conditions. What type of outcome have people with your specific health conditions had from the vaccine? And what type of complications have individuals with your specific health conditions had from the illness? And for this, you want to use data that has been collected. You want to look at the actual evidence that has been collected. So the last vaccine that I remember being really controversial was the Gardasil vaccine for HPV. And I do remember people telling me, well, I know 3 individuals who have received that vaccine and now they're unable to walk. And, that's really scary when you hear that. But then when I would ask them, well, who is it? Like, what's their name? And they didn't have a name because they didn't really know those people. It was just something, I guess, that they had heard. Sometimes when you hear stories about things that happen, you translate that in your mind to, these are people that I know, I guess. I'm not really sure where that comes from. But just make sure that instead of listening to stories about things happening to individuals, that you're actually looking at data that's being collected about the illness and about the vaccine. So can immunity fade? Yes, absolutely. Immunity can fade in either instance. So if you have been naturally exposed to the pathogen, those antibodies can fade. If you have been artificially exposed to the pathogen through immunization, those antibodies can fade. So a good example of this is chickenpox again. So I had chickenpox when I was a kid, and when I go to a new job in the healthcare industry, I have to have an antibody titer, which is a blood test to see, am I still immune to the varicella virus that causes chickenpox? Because even though I had chickenpox and I do have the antibodies for that, those can fade over your lifetime and you may have to receive a vaccine for that. The same thing with vaccination. If you have been vaccinated against varicella virus, those antibodies can fade and you may need a booster shot. There are some illnesses where natural immunity is just not the best option either way. So if an illness has a very high death rate, like for example, smallpox, you don't want to try to expose everybody to smallpox to see, who's going to build immunity and who's not going to, or to try to gain immunity that way, because it's too dangerous. Too many people are going to lose their lives. Too many people are going to be permanently disabled. So in situations like that, when you're dealing with a very dangerous pathogen, artificial immunity is more beneficial for individuals. And of course, always talk to your doctor. Let them know your concerns with any vaccine, with any illness. Talk to them about it. See what their recommendation is. You don't always have to go off your doctor's recommendation, but you do need to talk to them about your specific situation, your own health conditions, the risk and benefits for you individually, and just get that recommendation from someone who knows you in that capacity. Thank you for watching.